The Chicago Bulls have been trying in vain to move Zach LaVine's contract off their books, but it feels like they may have finally found a taker in the Denver Nuggets. I'm going to break down what the deal could look like, as well as what else the Denver Nuggets are up to, according to a recent report from The Athletic. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Going to keep you up to date on all the latest trade news around the NBA. So here's what's going on. Sam Amick of The Athletic reporting that with the NBA's trade window opening this past weekend and the trade deadline 2 months away, the Nuggets are canvassing the league in pursuit of a player who can offer significant help offensively. So essentially what's going on is the Denver Nuggets are recognizing that in their roster right now, as it presently sits, they are heavily reliant on Nikola Jokic, who's phenomenal. Maybe he's going to win yet another MVP. He's incredible. And Jamal Murray to create offense for them. And that's a bit of a challenge. They need somebody to come in and take some of that burden off of those two players, and they're looking for someone who can create their own shot. So the players they're looking at: Zach LaVine, Jordan Poole. That's an interesting one. We'll talk about that. Jordan Clarkson, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Johnson, and Jonas Valanciunas. So they're looking for a number. Now, Valanciunas obviously wouldn't be the scoring threat that the other players would be, but as a backup big to Jokic, certainly could do far worse than Valanciunas. But the focus on LaVine in recent discussions is significant, with the Nuggets interested in the 29-year-old who's averaging 21 points, almost 22, 4.4 rebounds, 4.2 assists this season. LaVine, a two-time All-Star, is owed $43 million this season. Yeah, let's look at the contract. So this is why Zach LaVine, despite putting up fantastic, he is having a great season, a fantastic season for the Chicago Bulls. But the reason why up to this point, everything we've heard is that there is no market for him. Teams aren't interested. It's because of his contract. $43 million this season, $46 million next season, $49 million the season after that. And insult to injury, it's a player option on that final year of his deal. That's a lot of money, especially under the restrictions of the new CBA. And so the challenge for Chicago has been finding anybody who, while everyone will admit Zach LaVine is a very, very talented player, he's playing fantastic basketball right now, finding anybody that's willing to take his contract. Most teams, it's just a non-starter. They're not interested in Zach LaVine's contract. So then why would Denver be interested? Why would they want to do something like this, and what would the deal look like? Well, focusing first on LaVine, again, they would want to do that to alleviate some of the pressure in terms of creating on the offensive end for Nikola Jokic and for Jamal Murray. This would also be a way, since their assets are rather limited in terms of future first-round draft capital they can actually give up, this would also be a way for the Denver Nuggets to add firepower to their roster, to add a very specific skill set that would help them out without having to lean on draft capital to do it, because the market for Zach LaVine is so weak. Because teams are not interested in trading for his contract, you should be able to work a trade for Zach LaVine and not have to include future draft capital. So you would not be able to say that. Let's say Zach LaVine was making $25 million, $30 million. No, they would be asking for a first-round pick at least, if not more. But because his contract is what it is, that gives you the opportunity to perhaps acquire him without having to give up future draft capital. Now, that doesn't mean that I think this is necessarily a smart move for the Denver Nuggets, because you take a look at their salaries. They're a first-tier apron team, which means they have to send out more money than they send back in a trade. So then we're talking about, you're giving up Michael Porter Jr., who also is under contract for 3 years, not for quite as much money as Zach LaVine. Porter Jr. is an excellent shooter, particularly movement shooter, but Zach LaVine can give you that in addition to a little bit of creation that Porter Jr. can't. Now, LaVine is a little bit older than Porter Jr., but nonetheless, both players have had injuries in their past, and I can see the appeal. However, let me add this. So you're talking about essentially stacking up Zeke Naji and Michael Porter Jr. in order to get a Zach LaVine trade to work. The challenge, I think, for the Denver Nuggets is this, and any team acquiring Zach LaVine, given what the market is right now, if this does not work, if Denver acquires Zach LaVine and it does not work, they're in trouble. If for whatever reason Zach LaVine gets hurt, something happens, or he's just not the right fit, his shooting goes awry, I'm not expecting that. I think he's a very talented player, but if it does not work, you're stuck. You're stuck if it doesn't work, because right now there's no market for Zach LaVine. Imagine if he suffered some kind of injury, whereas Michael Porter Jr., young enough to where even if he were to miss some time due to injury, I don't think that would necessarily scare teams off on him. If you go all in here for Denver and you go get Zach LaVine and it does not work, you're stuck with him. Or you're going to have to pay quite a bit, I think, to move his salary off the books because teams are already so wary of his injury history and his contract that's going to make it difficult to do. So that's the gamble here for Denver. Now, as Sam Amick reports, this isn't the first time that the Nuggets have shown a desire to upgrade with a wing scorer. And by the way, I believe this was, Tony Jones as well as Sam Amick. I want to make sure I give them both credit here. But this is not the first time that they've shown a desire to upgrade with the wing scorer. They also looked at Paul George in a trade that would have sent out also Porter Jr. and Zeke Naji. And then we look at some of the other names that are on their list. These are all guys who can bring scoring. Now, the nice thing is, though, Zach LaVine is the guy where just to get there salary-wise, you're going to have to stack up Porter Jr. and Zeke Naji. Like Jordan Clarkson, he's making a decent amount of money if we go check in on the Utah Jazz, but certainly not as difficult to get there for Jordan Clarkson making $14 million. That's a lot easier number to get to where you're not giving up Michael Porter Jr. in order to get him, nor should you, but that's something to consider. We go look at Jordan Poole, who is particularly, he's actually had a pretty strong season, but in general has been seen as a negative value contract, 3 years under contract, $29.6 million. I mean, then we're back into Michael Porter Jr. territory. Like, I know that Jordan Poole's had a good season, but man, if you're Washington and you're hearing you can get Porter Jr. for Jordan Poole, how quickly are you saying yes? I mean, you're not letting Denver off the phone. You're calling that in immediately and not allowing them to talk to anybody else. And unless you want to try to stack something with Aaron Gordon, and even then, he's not trade eligible to pass the trade deadline, so it would have to be. So Jordan Poole is a surprising addition there because, again, I would assume Washington would be jumping for joy, despite how well Poole has played relative to the past. I would think Washington would be thrilled to get Porter Jr. for Jordan Poole. So a little bit of a surprising addition to the list with that one. But Jordan Poole, Jordan Clarkson, DeAndre Hunter, he's showing the ability to score off the bench for the Atlanta Hawks as a wing player, can do some things defensively as well. And then we go take a quick look at his contract. This is a guy who has been in trade rumors in the past, but DeAndre Hunter, $21.7 million this season, $23.3 million next season, $24.9 million. So again, you're swapping out a like salary compared to Michael Porter Jr., and maybe you're able to stack in another piece here with DeAndre Hunter. Can you get, like, if I am the Denver Nuggets, I'm looking at, can I get DeAndre Hunter and Larry Nance in a package if I have to give up Michael Porter Jr.? And can I add to my size, depth here on this team with, say, a Larry Nance Jr. type player? That's what I'd be looking at for DeAndre Hunter, who, again, has shown some scoring ability, 3 years under contract. And I think that's where the Denver Nuggets may be willing to pursue some guys that some other teams may not, if their trade piece is Michael Porter Jr., because a lot of teams right now, they are allergic to any contract that goes past 1 year. They just are. They are not interested in contracts that go past a year. They don't want non-expiring contracts. Teams are running scared of the new CBA. And so if you are able to turn Michael Porter Jr., who's got 3 years under contract, and maybe a team would prefer him to what they've already got, or they see him as more movable than what they've already got, and you go and turn him into another 3-year contract, well, for the Nuggets, you're buying a distressed asset, right? Because you're buying a player who, while can be talented, for example, like Zach LaVine, it doesn't change that much for your future salaries. Not that much, because you're trading away a 3-year contract anyway, rather than having to give up like an expiring. So they're changing the math, changing the calculation on that kind of a trade. So it's an interesting idea that the Nuggets might be looking to do something like that. Let's take a look here, though. Very careful to note, Denver still values Porter Jr. and what he does for the spacing significantly, makes $36 million this season, and the Nuggets have even had extension talks with Porter. So essentially, they understand they need more offensive creation. They know Michael Porter Jr. doesn't do that. He's more of a movement shooter. He's a catch and shoot guy. He can do some things, got good size, all of that, but he's not going to give you that shot creation ability that some of these other guys they're looking at, particularly Zach LaVine, would. But they're making sure they put in here, but Denver's not out. This is not a fire sale on Porter Jr. They like him. Look, they've even tried to talk extension with him, that type of thing. So this is the way I read this. This is the Denver side of things, covering their tracks here. Yes, Porter Jr. is getting involved in trade talks, but that's not that we don't like him. Don't think we don't like him. We like him plenty. The last thing they want to do is put out there that, oh, they're eager to move Michael Porter Jr., because all that's going to do is increase leverage with their trade opponents or trade partners, I guess, in this case. So Denver's casting a wide net. They're doing what they can to try to figure out a way to move back up towards the top of the Western Conference. You look at the West right now, Denver, as we projected, it's not been as big of a slip as I thought it might be for the Nuggets, but I did think they would take a step back. That losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, losing Aaron Gordon for the amount of time that they did, they would take a step back, and they indeed have. They're the 5th seed right now in the West. You look at their point differential, it tells you that they are not in the same tier as the upper echelon teams in the Western Conference right now, and I think in order to get there, they do need to shake up their roster. It's a challenge to do it, given their salary structures right now, how much money they have on the books, and how little future draft capital they've got. And that's where maybe they have to think outside the box a little bit and explore trades for some players like Zach LaVine, like Jordan Poole, that other teams would simply not be willing to explore. But this is the first. And remember, it only takes one. All it takes is one team to be interested in Zach LaVine to change a market that for months, for over a year, really, has been completely non-existent for Zach LaVine. No team has been interested in taking him on. Maybe the Denver Nuggets see something here, see this as an opportunity to get a player who's very, very talented and get him without having to give up draft capital because of the market being so weak for him. But everybody, give me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're the Denver Nuggets, would you swap Michael Porter Jr. and Zeke Nnaji to get Zach LaVine? Is that a wise trade for the Denver Nuggets? I would have to assume Chicago would do it. Maybe it turns into a 3-team trade, but Porter Jr. is also young enough to where maybe he just becomes part of Chicago's future. You get Porter Jr. along with Josh Giddey, along with Kobe White, and there you go. If I was Chicago, I'd be pretty intrigued by that possibility as well. But everybody, let me know in the comment section. Is Denver getting desperate here, or are they taking advantage of the market that is going to let a talented player wind up in their hands? Give me your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget, subscribe right here. Go check out our latest video. We talked about De'Aaron Fox. It was a vertical live De'Aaron Fox potentially being put on the trade market as well, as his contract situation is getting figured out. So go check that out. Click on it right now.